We're the one.
We'll get around
we
to
brought
it.
out every one of these things all along, how it should be changed. And don't tell me the aldermen haven't watched it or the city officials haven't watched it. They know exactly what we're talking about. But they decided to cover it up, and now they're going to come out front and say, oh, we're going to lead the charge. So there's a parade. We're going to get in front. We're going to talk about Black Lives Matter. No, Black Lives obviously didn't matter until it became a national hotbed item. Now all of a sudden it matters. But all these things mattered prior to it, but you did nothing about it.
Mm-hmm. Good morning. Welcome back to Talking Racine. George, you're here today, right? And Jim.
Checking out.
Yes.
Yeah, and me. And we're here to tell you, we were right. That question you posed when we always have a conversation before we get into the taping. And you posed a question now, if people had listened to us and not just thought we were a bunch of barking dogs on the front porch and implemented some of the changes or some of the corrections that we've recommended through the years that we've been doing this show, would Racine be a different community?
Yeah, in other words, with all the stuff going on, the death and destruction across the country, would we just be sitting here and saying, hey, we got things going, we're all busy working, be no demonstrations, we're getting along fine? Maybe the rest of the world should look at us, look at Racine. Would that be our situation if all the things we've covered over the last couple of years had been implemented, and we've gotten some things straightened out? And we're going to go through that list now.
And I say yes.
Well, let's go through the list here and see what you
got a
think
list. I got a copy of your list. You got the original there. Why don't you go ahead and pop off a couple of these things?
I'm going to start with the most recent. I would think that one of the areas that if you follow politics a little bit in Racine, if you looked at the last aldermanic races, you had opponents from the Democratic Party against Henry Perez, against Kerry Glenn, Dennis Monte, I think those Malcolm Platt. And they spent a lot of money. They did a lot of footwork. They worked hard at defeating everybody except Kerry Glenn, which was...
Well, they didn't get Henry either.
Well, they didn't get Henry either, yeah. But that was very close.
They worked very hard on all
very
four
hard,
of them, very hard,
and spent a lot of money. My question is, why did the Democratic Party not go after Trish Hansen, who was up for re-election?
That's a good question.
District attorney.
They haven't managed to find a candidate.
They can't find. Now, we're talking about the Tyrese West. We're talking about Dante Shannon. We're talking about Machinery Row. We're talking about a number of things that are laid on her desk that she completely disregarded the community. But yet, the Democratic Party can't find a candidate. Geez, we can't find a candidate. We could find a candidate to run against Kerry Glenn, which was almost comical to me.
Yeah. Find somebody. Here, put your name on a dotted line. We'll
back you up.
We'll back you up. We'll run your campaign for you. But yet, when it comes to Trish Hansen, can't find anybody.
And there are issues that go through that office that you've just highlighted that are extremely important and extremely germane to the situation that we have going on today, where there's demonstrations in the streets. And the reason that this is resonating in Racine is because we had a couple of high-profile killings at the hands of the police right here in this community, and it was just kind of like wallpapered over. Nothing
so
was
when
done
you
about
see
it.
the Democratic Party coming out like we're going to change and we're going to make some changes, they are the problem. They have been a problem. Not to say that the Republicans haven't
they're
got
part of the problem, yeah.
But they really haven't done anything. Matter of fact, if you really go back and look at this with the incarceration rate that we've had in the city of Racine for the last 25, 30 years, it's been Democrats. It's always had some kind of a foot in the door that's a lot of times condone what's going on in this community. And now you're, we're behind you. We're with you. Our representatives are here. The representatives have been an absolute 100% failure, and now it's showing. And somebody's got to call them out.
Here's something you brought up was the police report that Mayor Mason asked for early in his tenure.
Correct.
And what happened with that?
No, this was a police report on the morale of the police.
Yeah,
it was a question of, How are the police doing? Are they okay? Are they depressed? I mean, what's the situation?
What's happening within the
That
department?
was a big study. A lot of money put out.
And he put it out there. He didn't go through the Common Council. There were some questions of how you spend $118,000 and don't have to ask anybody to do it. Well, he can do it. Held up by the city attorney. We'll get to him too, but they put this report out. It comes back, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, wait a sec. We got to do some fact checking.
Not ready for public dissemination yet.
So what they did was, let's send it back. So obviously there were questions and needed to be answered within that report and should have been addressed. But no address was done. Corey Mason sends it back to the firm that put it together, and they whitewashed it, sent it back, and now we can release this. This is okay.
Yeah. Well, another thing that's not really changed in the last few years, and there was an awful lot of noise being made about it, and that's the marijuana laws. Now we have a governor who is allegedly sympathetic to change. We've got a Democratic mayor who allegedly, or at least party-wise, is sympathetic to this issue. We've got people on the Common Council who have been promoting this as something that needs to be changed, but it's just sort of disappeared into the background.
No, they were elected.
We know that this is a large part of the incarceration rate that everybody's complaining about in this town.
Yeah, that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
There's so many people put in jail for smoking a little marijuana or, selling a couple of bucks worth of it to a friend of theirs or something like that. Yeah. And so that was supposedly changed. It was going to be changed. It was approved. And what the heck happened? They didn't stalled or didn't get. It never got implemented.
No, it never got implemented. They're going to use state law, and of course it falls down.
I believe Tricia Hansen had something to do with that too, didn't she? Yeah,
John Tate was leading the charge. John just couldn't figure out how to make this happen, even though he's at the governor's office now.
And
John,
the president of the council.
Can you make anything happen with marijuana? Are you capable of that, or are you just worried about your career and how I'm going to set myself up for the next move? Because that's what you're really about. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah. Tell them how you really feel, Jeff.
How about the Sandy Widener case? Why hasn't Mayor Mason spoken up about the secret court that was held there to repress Sandy Widener?
And this is really important. This is where you get openness in government. And this is
a couple of years ago he got an award for being a champion of open government.
Yeah, that's right. And then
last year he got an award for being no friend of open government.
Yeah, he got the opposite reward.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like if you want to really start changing things in the city, this is where it gets really critical, and that's an openness in government. In fact, there's a whole organization built around that now called Hot Government, Honest, Open, and Transparent Government. So, for them to fail on this, to me, is really big. I mean, this can really change things in the city. Is just to get.
So we all want to work together for change. Well, why is it the Common Council never backed up Sandy Widener, or the attorney literally goes after her, and Mason was involved in it to cover up his own doings, but yet when it comes down to it, Jason Meekma, he knew what went on. He was head of the Common Council at the time.
Yeah.
All the council members, they all hid under their bed. Oh, we can't handle that situation because Sandy's not good. And those guys that follow Sandy, or she ran for mayor, we can't have that. So now you've got another situation where we got to do change. We'll have to do change. But your representatives are all involved in this. It's time to call these representatives out because it's not doing you any justice.
Well, they call for change, but the same old situation that has prevailed for a couple hundred years in this country, somehow more comfortable. Somehow it's not that important to change this particular issue about this particular time. We'll get around to it, though, because, boy, it's really creating problems.
And we're the one.
We'll get around
we
to
brought
it.
out every one of these things all along, how it should be changed. And don't tell me the aldermen haven't watched it or the city officials haven't watched it. They know exactly what we're talking about. But they decided to cover it up. And now they're going to come out front and say, oh, we're going to lead the charge. So there's a parade. We're going to get in front. We're going to talk about Black Lives Matter. No, Black Lives obviously didn't matter until it became a national hotbed item. Now all of a sudden it matters. But all these things mattered prior to it, but you did nothing about it.
Mm-hmm. It matters when there's a crowd. Exactly. I've noticed that whenever there's a crowd gathered, some of these politicians like to get down there and just walk up to the front of the action and make sure that they use the crowd, the protest, or whatever kind of civil activity is going on as a backdrop for their own promotion. They don't really
get down
do
there
a
and
damn
say
thing
something
about
that sounds
anything.
good. Yeah, when we got the actual
soundbite.
action.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not
Where
send
is
out a
he?
press release, have your campaign communicating director go out there and make you really do the best you possibly
I
can.
think they call them photo ops.
And maybe you got to
Yeah.
kneel. He might even have to kneel yet, Corey. But here's the other one. One that I was involved with Thomas Holmes and the bar lawsuit.
Yeah.
Now here we're talking about roughly, I'm going to say there were 24, 27 minority-owned businesses in the community. By the time they whittled this down and were taking money off of the bar and all the Democrats, again, covering up, taking money, they ended up with 4 or 5 bars. They continued to whittle it down.
Now, these were minority bars.
All minority bars.
Minority businesses. And it was clearly demonstrated in that case that the amount of police activity required to address any issues at those bars was, in fact, less than what was required at a lot of white bars.
Absolutely.
So,
100%.
I mean, there's an example of systemic racism going on. Now, what has happened with the Public Safety and Licensing Committee, which is the committee that determines what kind of disciplinary action should take place if there's problems with a bar, who should receive a license, etc., etc. What has gone on there?
There were reports made at that time, and there were 2 professors. There was a group out of Philadelphia, and there was a group, I believe, out of Seattle, that did reports on Racine and what the racism that was in Racine. Mm-hmm. They named particularly a number of different individuals. They had police. They had a string of racist emails between different aldermen, between police people.
Now, I would think that it would be important that you would appoint a chairman to that particular committee who's sensitive to minority issues. Who have we got?
We got Jeff Coe. Now, Jeff Coe was reported in those reports of having take the Hennessy off the shelf because, it attracts black people. Raise your drink prices. I mean, this was Jeff Coe. One of the emails was, Jeff Coe is pleased with us having a target on one of the bars. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that went on. Now, he is in charge of the licensing committee, which Corey Mason has appointed. Mm-hmm. How's that working for you folks that are complaining? Let's look at where the base of what your problem is.
It's nice to see Corey down there, though, when there's a large group of people and, talking about the problems that need to be addressed. That's nice.
Now, one of the things I know for a fact that Corey had gotten those emails because I had a phone call from Keith Fair, who was involved in that lawsuit.
Hand delivered them
to Corey Mason. Mm-hmm. All the racist emails. Hand delivered them.
Those are Jeff Coe's racist emails you're talking
about.
Some
of them were his, yeah. Some
were his, some were...
various people within the city hall.
30, 40 of them.
Yeah, okay.
But now, let's take one step further. The city attorney has those in his office. He's quite aware of what went on. But when that information was given to the alderman, we can't see that. We don't understand it. The attorney said, there's not a problem here. No, there was a big problem there. But you elected to stick your head in the sand. And that's what's happened. And this whole Common Council's done that. Not only that, I want to call out supervisors. Fabi Maldonado, Nick Dembski, who's all up front there.
Well, these are guys that are advocating for change and campaigned on
but
the idea.
But they don't know how to do it. They don't have the guts to go out and make a change. Stand up. Make some legislation. Do something because you're not a representative. All you are is a talking head.
Yeah, it's not about just showing up for a demonstration
and
maybe getting arrested or...
And to do something
really
can be real easy. One of the things I continually push for is more freedom. Freedom just solves a lot of human problems, and if they just went out, you're talking about Bobby and Dembski, go out and just find a couple ordinances that you really don't need and get rid of them. Just do that for a start.
Yeah, start.
Take it nice, easy, and once you got into that mode,
they've all been, and a lot of
once you get a taste of it,
you might find it's fun, and people will like it, and the pressure gets taken off of people, and all of a sudden the police aren't out having to enforce things that don't need to be enforced. I mean, there's a lot. There's some things you can do. Go ahead, Jim. I interrupted you.
Again, you have to make those. You have to step out. You can't just be one of the crowd. And what's happened, I noticed that what happens especially with these young representatives that are going to be leaders, you're not leaders, you're followers because you've bought into this whole Democratic Party mentality. You all get together, you have the party together.
Leading down the same old rut. Come on, folks.
Yeah, just keep following us. It's okay.
Here's a trail well
Stand
traveled.
on your own. Stand out.
And to be clear, we're not advocating that you become Republicans and hang out with them and do the same
Be an
lazy-ass job
independent.
you're
Use
doing.
your brain. Actually become a leader, A leader steps out. They're the ones that are actually, I don't go in front of a crowd and say, "Oh, I agree with you. I agree with you." That's great. What have you done? Nick Dembski had an opportunity to sign up the recall for Trish Hansen. Wouldn't do it. Are you kidding me? I mean, Fabi Maldonado at least signed it. But I mean, it just shows where they're at. They want to be part of the group. And I just don't see anyone in government.
But still give lip service to social issues.
Exactly. But I don't see anybody in government that's got any leadership qualities. Zero. There's nobody that stands up. I'll tell you what's that. Carrie Glenn.
I was going to say, Carrie shows up.
Yeah. Henry does occasionally.
Yeah. But I mean, they ask a question. I mean, do they stand up and say, "Hey, listen, we got a problem here"? I don't hear anything. It's crickets.
Well, you don't actually have much going on in the city council right now with this COVID-19 thing.
Doesn't matter if you had them if you didn't have them.
Yeah, but I mean, it's pretty much now that Corey's running the city, pretty much as he wants to.
Yeah, does what he wants. If Corey wants it, Corey gets it.
He did it with the rents thing.
Yeah.
Just put in a whole big chart of penalties and fines all by himself. Didn't even go for it.
But here's the problem, George. This is what I'm talking about. This is what's going on over and over.
Why doesn't he change the marijuana law? He's got all this power that he's accessing now. Why doesn't he change that?
I still go back to this because they're all working together. Because Trish Hansen, Corey Mason, this is all a big group here that stays together. You got the highest incarceration rate. You find situations where I think George, you brought it up with the police officers. I mean, what happens?
There's
there?
a lot of revenue created with crime.
Absolutely, there is.
It's small-time crime.
But you're talking about
municipal offenses.
Has anybody called out the officers and said, "Hey, some of these officers should be really reviewed as to what they've done"?
Somehow, if that's what you're referring to, somehow we've got to get over this hurdle of releasing a police officer that just doesn't belong a police officer, despite what all the rules and regulations may say. There's certain types of people I don't believe need to be or should be police officers at all. And somebody that gets all wound up with his power and his ability to push people around and takes that and uses it does not belong as a police officer. It's just that simple. And I don't know that there's any police test to ferret that out. But there is something that does indicate it, and that is when you start getting complaints against the officer for abuses on the job.
I'll tell you what, if I was a cop, I wouldn't want these guys as co-workers. They make it rough on everybody.
Well, and there's another spot, because that is what seems to come out when you get suddenly these really abusive cases. It's not the first time. Oh my gosh, the guy's had 10, 15 complaints before that, and if we could get that change in there, I think that might solve a lot with regards to
Well, I think you have to. This stuff has to be brought up. But here's one of the problems in the black community: they get bought off. Democratic Party comes in and basically buys off the black leaders, what leaders there may be, and that's very few. But they buy off churches, they buy off young leaders. We give them a position. We move you here. You get a.
We got a social program you can tap into.
We got a nice little program you can tap into, make a nice little nest for you. And that's it. All of a sudden, your mouth is shut and nothing's being done. It's hard being a leader. It's hard doing things that is against the grain.
Here's a big one that we complained about repeatedly, and we will continue to complain about: Machinery Row.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Millions and millions of dollars
What a waste.
went into vacating that land, destroying all the businesses that were down there. They're kaput. What happened to all of that recycling money? I mean, now you did a video of that guy, and he talked about millions of dollars worth of materials.
Largest salvage of wood, antique wood in the country. Largest.
We have called for a reconciliation or a statement about how that was reconciled, where the money went, who got it, how much there was. Crickets.
It's
No
a
mention of it being-
huge criminal activity that went on there. and nobody's going to.
And destruction of the destruction of business,
Yep.
and not only that, but there were still vacant rooms in there that could be used.
Oh, George, it was
more businesses going to come in and
a shame.
yeah.
And they rip off the DNR. Of course, the DNR doesn't see anything. I mean, you've got a problem. Hell yeah, you got a problem. We brought that problem up. We've been bringing it up for 2 years. Oh, you can't listen to
2
those
years.
guys. 3 years.
5.
5 years. Hell, did a documentary on it. I mean, this is the thing. But nobody wanted to listen. Oh, we can't listen. Oh, those guys don't understand what you're talking about. No, we understand completely what's going on. And we said what's going on. You didn't want to listen. Your representatives didn't want to listen. And matter of fact, you put representatives who were really not representatives. You put a warm body in a place so they can control it, so they can keep this money machine running.
They were part of the shenanigans.
They were.
Yeah.
It's an embarrassment. Racine is totally an embarrassment. I can't help but say it.
It is. I think people around the state realize that.
No, they do. We go somewhere and talk to them about Racine.
Yeah.
Well, we maintain the highest unemployment rate in the state. I mean,
We're number one.
come on.
And we're number one in incarceration, too. Don't sell us short.
Yeah. Here's one more. Here's one more I want to bring up. John Dickert gets into a fight. We brought the young man on that got into an altercation with John Dickert on a road rage situation, and they're going to give him
They
Disorderly
charged each
conduct.
of them with disorderly
Let's go
conduct.
back to Keith Fair, the black guy who got into an altercation with his girlfriend or bar friend as he drove home.
She never complained.
She never complained. She went to the doctor, had a mark on her throat or her shoulder or something. Oh, we got to get it. All of a sudden, that got blown up. Arrested him. Kidnapping, suffocation,
Strangulation. Yeah.
I mean, here's your black guy. Wait a sec. Oh, Keith Fair's a bad guy. You can't. Keith Fair's a bad guy. So this is something that we have to do to protect the community from people like Keith. But yet John Dickert goes over there, works with the Democratic Party, big Democrat. They all know him. Hey, John Tate, you know John Dickert? Do you know him? Maybe you should call him out for what he's done. But you don't have the guts to do that, do you?
Why isn't Trish Hansen doing something? Well, she finally, after a lot of pressure,
She had to
charged
put
him
the
with
pressure.
disorderly conduct.
No, they
but then
don't
a couple of
have
days
it.
later, they slapped a disorderly conduct charge on the kid who was the victim of the incident.
But this is your party. This is who you are. You like it or not, this is who you are.
And unfortunately, it's being brought to Racine, and the result is that we're thrown in with the rest of the groups across the country, rest of the cities across the country, as being a troublesome spot. Jim,
Am I a little aggressive?
Yeah, no. You've brought in some good things there, and I would just look at our viewers right now. You've seen the things you've talked about. Suppose all of those have been followed. Suppose somebody just gone and decide, that's a good point with the police officers and Trish Hansen and the various other things you mentioned, and straighten things out. Machinery Row. Can you imagine Machinery Row been straightened out?
If you actually had someone come in and say, "Hey, this was an issue in your community, and there needs to be some criminal charges."
Yeah, between the thing
straighten
with
it out.
Trish Hansen and the marijuana, we certainly would have relieved some of the pressure between police and the community. That maybe some things would have eased there too.
This whole war on drugs thing is just it's insane the way that's been handled, and to put marijuana at the top of the list. I mean, this is a natural substance that people have been using for thousands and thousands of years across many cultures, but for some reason or another, you can't have that in America. That's going to make people crazy. It's going to make them criminals.
Yeah.
Well, how come crime hasn't just shot up in these communities where they have made it legal? How come?
You know it's bogus, and same with a lot of this. If they would actually police there's a lot of corruption in the city of Racine. It's not been policed. Your police hasn't done it. Your sheriff hasn't done it. The DOJ hasn't done it. The FBI hasn't done it. You know who needs to do it? Community needs to do it. The community needs to put the pressure on and ask for these investigations.
And don't forget about your suggestion about City Hall. If we could just get the biased nature out of City Halls where anybody could start up a business, I mean, that takes pressure off the inner city too, I mean, and this whole thing, marijuana on one side, City Hall on the other side, things could be a lot better.
Well, I think the way it's structured right now, you almost have to be a successful money-generating enterprise from day one. with all of the fees and licensing costs, et cetera, and all of the mandates that they have for a small business to come in and open up an operation.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be making money or have
Absolutely.
about 6 months worth of money stashed aside in order to get through that opening period.
That's right, and
The
this
bar
is stuff
just
we
so
talked
high.
about.
Yeah.
You know, this could have been going on for years already. Already, we could have a resurging city, a resurging inner city, a resurging, you know, where this stuff goes on around the country.
Yep.
I'm beginning to see what you're saying, Jim. Where this stuff goes all around the country, and we're sitting here saying, "What's the problem?" You know,
We
doing
run a
fine.
good,
we're
clean
all busy
operation.
with our businesses
Yeah,
and stuff. We
absolutely.
don't have time for all this.
And
riding.
government- clean.
Have you guys traveled much at all? I mean, you get around to some of these small towns. It's maybe you'll find a town that used to be a farming community, and maybe they had a little something going on the side, and essentially it turned into a ghost town.
Yeah.
And people come in, and people of an artistic bent come in, and they start opening up some of these little storefronts that are so cheap because nobody wants them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, well, yeah, you can have it for a couple $100
Yeah.
a
Oh,
month.
yeah.
I'd be happy to have somebody in there looking after my building.
Yep.
But that doesn't happen here. Well, you know, that's prime real estate.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
right down by
they have
downtown.
an image of themselves which is false.
Yeah.
Because you don't realize you have nothing going for you, and you've created a basically
A lot of barriers.
total barriers,
Yeah.
and you don't correct the barriers. When they're in front of you, you don't correct them because we got to hide them. Because it's all about politics. It's all about moving me up the ladder. That's all it is. It's not about doing anything with any kind of substance and actually correcting the problems. You don't do it. You're not going to correct the problems. You're not going to move forward.
I got a question. Where the heck has the local newspaper been through all of this?
Oh, my God, that's another one.
I mean, what kind of reporting have they done on any of these issues when it comes right
They
down
got
to it?
these issues. These issues were sent to them. They knew exactly what these
Absolutely.
issues were, and they decided to just cover it up. We don't want it to be bad for Racine. No,
Mm-hmm.
because you're tied in with these politicians, just like you are with everything else. So it's all like who knows who, and we're going to keep stuff covered up. You're just as much of a problem with this as the rest of them.
But we do want to give a shout out to Alyssa Mock, who left the Journal-Times recently, in the footsteps of other people who are good journalists who have left the Journal-Times and left the community. Good luck to you, Alyssa. We hope that you do well wherever you've settled in, and we appreciate what you did while you were in this community. And we would tell all the other reporters and workers down at the Journal-Times, there is somebody that we think, as public consumers of news, there is somebody that you might want to model yourself after. Somebody who, unafraid, talked to people into the community and tried to give both sides of the story. So I think we're in agreement, right? If people would have listened to us, if they would have started running the city the way we think it should be run,
I think that's right. I
At least
agree with
open it
that.
up and
Yeah, hell of a
ask
lot
some
better
questions
place.
and challenge some of these issues.
Yeah,
They
well,
were good.
And I think the point is there's a way out of this mess, and it doesn't have to be through rioting and burning and that type of thing. It can be just through some common sense activities, taking in everyday life and
And
everyday
get engaged. And get
activities in
engaged. The
government.
community
Yeah.
needs
Yeah.
to get engaged in their local politics. They need-
actually make some change.
Yeah.
Quit talking about change and make some change.
And if you have trouble finding some, tell them to tune in. Look over the past
Follow our guide.
hundred some issues of
Yeah.
of
It's all
Talking
there.
Racine.
It's all there.
You can find you can find lots of
Nobody
ideas.
else has
of
talked
things that
about
change.
it. Now all of a sudden it's like the forefront. They're all running out front. Well, we've been there.
Well, congratulations, George and Jim. And let me pat myself on the back. I think we've done a hell of a job. We're going to be back next week to do another hell of a job. And we hope you come back and sit with us. Thank you.
Good. Well, that show's definitely going to get. And I'm going to tag them all. I'm going to tag them all. The hell with them.
I think we put together another good one.
Yeah, I think so.